our top story this half hour. One lawmaker wants to protect homeowners from drones that fly onto their property. A bill headed to the Oklahoma Senate floor would exempt people from civil liability if they damage trespassing drones not regulated by the Federal Aviation Administration. Joining us is Oklahoma State Senator Ralph Shorty. State Senator Shorty, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So you authored this bill. What is your reason behind it? Let's talk first where you see the trouble.
Well, you know, first off, I support the industry tremendously. In fact, a few years ago, I was looking at starting a drone service company that would do this kind of work. So the industry is a thriving industry, and I think it's something that we really need to look towards the future. However, you also got a balance of the private property, the expectation of privacy of landowners, and this is a bill that I think is very balanced in doing that. There's still some changes that need to occur with it, but for the most part, what it's going to do is grant civil liability to landowners who damage a drone in any way where there is a reasonable expectation of privacy. And right now, there are two Supreme Court cases that kind of control what airspace is and whose it is. That would be the Cosby case from 1946 and then the Riley case from 1986. That pretty much establishes that under the 400-foot threshold, private property owners have a reasonable expectation of privacy. The bill is written with those wordings because as this evolves, then the laws need to evolve as well to grant enough liberty for the industry, but also protect the privacy rights of citizens.
You know, I don't know how our panel feels about this, but I agree with you. I mean, things have gotten out of hand. You've got drones flying. You don't know if they have a camera on them and if they're spying on you and they're on your property. Having said that, the companies like Amazon and UPS, they've started testing drone deliveries. So how do you address that if you've got a delivery coming or a delivery coming next door and the drone has to fly over your house to get to the delivery that it has to make, and it has a camera? What do you do then?
Well, and that's where we really need some guidance from Congress on where you're going to allow this. I mean, the Cosby case is very clear. It said all the way up to 326 feet, and it said for sure 83 foot. The FAA has no regulatory authority up to 83 foot on any land and 326 foot for most properties. And so, you know, I love it. I do Amazon Prime all the time. I hope, and I cannot wait for the first day that a drone delivers a package to my door. But it's got to be done properly. And, you know, if you invite that drone to your property, you don't have a reasonable expectation of privacy at that point.
Right. Well,
but for those people that would. That's a good point. And I tell you, in Oklahoma, it's become a public safety issue. We've got cattle rustlers that are using this to spy on people's land so they can steal cattle. We've got people using drones to smuggle drugs into prisons. It's becoming a serious issue, and it's widespread.
Well, drug smuggling is clearly into a prison is clearly not legal, but what about the use of drones to survey another man's property? There's no law on the books right now that would say that you can't do that. That, to your point.
Well, I think the Supreme Court rulings are, I mean, they are the controlling law right now, and the Supreme Court rulings specifically state that the public has no access, the public has no right underneath 400 foot. That's what the FAA regulates. And so when you're talking about invading somebody's personal private property, we know the threshold is at least 83 foot. If you're flying a drone over somebody's property and it's 10 foot, 83 foot, whatever, then that property owner has a right to recourse. And this is establishing, now again, this is not giving them any criminal liability protections, it's simply civil liability protections. So that way, if the drone operator is 10 foot in your property and you bat that thing down with a bat or a net or an RF interrupter, some kind of technology that can bring it down because they're spying on you, then the drone operator cannot sue you for that. The perfect example of this is Senator Inhofe. Every year he does a pigeon hunt. Well, last year during his pigeon hunt, some animal rights activists flew a drone right overhead of these guys that were hunting these birds, and one of them shot it down. Well, they sent Senator Inhofe a bill for that drone, and they could even sue him for the damage to that drone. And that is ridiculous. That's the kind of stuff that I'm trying to stop.
So wait, let me just ask you, is that the way you propose homeowners take that drone down, by shooting it down? Is that what we should do?
Well, it's going to be entirely different depending on where you are. In the rural areas, I think that would be if it's I mean, you got to understand, a shotgun's range is 30 to 50 foot, if that. You're not going to be able to shoot this thing with a rifle. They're just too small to do that.
You need
But
a shotgun.
I would suggest some kind of RF interrupter or even a net. I mean, it just depends on the situation.
What if you don't have a
But if
gun?
you feel
Yeah, this is the feel-good.
What if you don't have a
Where
shotgun?
he's from Oklahoma, everybody's got a gun in Oklahoma.
Yeah, but I'm in New York, and
Just
there's
about
drones flying all over near my house.
Yeah, nobody owns you.
I think this is the feel-good bill of the decade. I think it's fantastic, and I think we
I
should
love
go to
it.
Orkin and say, here's a new kind of pest control. Bring in Orkin, get the Orkin man. He'll take it out. That's the way to get rid of them. I think there are RF and a lot of frequency things you can do without using a shotgun, although that might be fun.
Senator, one quick question.
Yes.
It sounds as if we, in addition to what you're trying to do, we really need a broader guideline on how drones are appropriate, how they're not appropriate, and try to regulate this, because it could get a little scary. Do you have a big picture view of what we ought to be doing, over the next 10 years to make sure these things don't get out of control?
Yes, absolutely. Congress has to act, and right now they gave the FAA the authority to regulate these things. The regulations came out this summer, and they were not good enough. They do not protect private property well enough, and nor is it the job of the FAA to protect private. I mean, that's not their job is to regulate. Their job is not to create law. Congress really needs to step in, and we're going to have to set up some kind of a commerce system where you're going to protect private property interests to a certain height, and then there's going to have to be an area where these things can fly that is regulated by or that is authorized by Congress, so that way they're not interfering with commercial traffic and they're also protecting the private interest and the privacy interests of folks. We've got to do this. This bill is simply. Right now, the little old lady called the Aeronautics Commission a few weeks ago, and there was a drone in her backyard with flashing lights, and she had no idea what to do with it. Had she taken some kind of action against that thing, then the drone operator could have sued her. This is just simply a placeholder until Congress fixes this issue and figures out what to do with it.
Bottom line, State Senator, you think drones should be regulated?
Absolutely, and I think they're necessary. I mean, I think it's a great industry, and I highly support it. But absolutely, they got to be regulated. And the government's interest is to protect the citizen first, to advance then the industry second, and then when there's conflict, their job is to come in and balance that conflict out, and that's what we need. That's what we need the government to do right now.
All right, we'll be watching that. Senator, good to have you on the program today. Thanks so much.
Thank you.